Hi, I'm Jo Clark, and thanks so much for joining me today. This is the Redefining Midlife Podcast, a podcast designed for the 40-plus woman who is determined to challenge society's myths and beliefs around midlife. It's for the woman who is inspired and ready to define midlife her way. Join me each week as I chat to health and wellness experts for up-to-date information on how to live well, as well as some special conversations with incredible everyday women redefining what midlife can look like. Here's to making our next half of life even better than the first. Welcome to the first chat I have with another midlife woman about what it's like to be in this season of life. I'd love to introduce you to Penne FitzGerald. The Penne's story is so interesting, and I'm sure it's going to resonate with many of you, particularly if you've had children later in life. Penne was raised in the Queensland outback and educated in Toowoomba. She completed a degree in media studies and production and lived in various parts of the world before settling in the beautiful Hinton, New Zealand, where she currently lives with her husband and tween-aged daughter. Penne is a Jill of all trades, having had over 35 different jobs and careers, ranging from radio announcer to research assistant to event coordinator. Now, recently she launched her business, The Noosa Stylist, which is a multifaceted styling business focusing on food, interiors, and styled photos for social media accounts. I really hope you enjoy listening to our chat as much as I loved having it. Welcome to the Redefining Midlife Podcast, Penne. I'm absolutely thrilled to have you on here today because I think the conversation we're going to have is going to resonate with a lot of the women who are going to be listening. So welcome.
Thanks, Jo. Thanks for having me.
Now, Penne, just to set the scene, you're a woman in your late 40s. So how have you found midlife to be so far? Because it can be an adventure for some of us.
Yes, I'm finding it a really interesting time because you get to reap the rewards of your life experience thus far, but you've still got the energy to sort of enjoy life still. You know, you're not too far gone. So you've got this knowledge, wisdom, you're more worldly, but you can really take it and run with it. And yeah.
Oh, that's great. And so has there been anything as you've gone through the years of midlife that's entering, have you found anything that surprised you or disappointed you so far?
On one hand, I'm enjoying an element of lowered inhibitions, the freedom, feeling a bit more like I can say what I feel, and being a little less conscious of people's judgment and what they're going to think. Not that I've got no filter, it's not that, and I've certainly have empathy, so it's not that I don't have empathy, but I used to be so scared of doing the wrong thing and so scared of getting in trouble. And you start to get to a point where you're just thinking, no, hang on, I've earned this. I can see why people, much older women just go, no, this is my time. I can do what I want because I've earned this. Well, I'm sort of getting a little bit more to that point where you think, no, it's a really good, it's a good space to be in, actually, mentally, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I find it more liberating where your younger years, you're so absorbed probably with yourself more, and you're also worried about what other people are thinking. In reality, they're probably not thinking about you, they're thinking about themselves anyway. But yeah, I just found it to be more liberating. The older I'm getting, like you said, the more likely you are to not give as many whatevers. The fact that you are aware, but you're not concerned what people may think as much. And that is a wonderful state to be in.
It is. It's liberating and energizing. So when I was younger, there was this element of a very different attitude to risk. I did some pretty crazy things. Well, not crazy, but, now I think, God, how could I have jumped on that aeroplane in Egypt that sounded like a lawnmower and there was a strong smell of fuel leaking and everyone was smoking cigarettes and off we flew. And I'm thinking, but I was like, oh, this is an adventure. Now there is no way I would do that because I'd be thinking about all your commitments now. I have a child to think of. There's that level, I suppose, I do find a little bit more challenging. You don't get to be as selfish now because you do, and maybe that's me because I've got a younger child, but it's just that as you grow up, you have to grow up.
Well, that's true, because again, when you look back at what you may have done in your 20s, yeah, you were far more carefree, more likely to make those sorts of decisions that you wouldn't make now. But I wonder if it's because, again, brains aren't quite as developed. You're not looking at the possibilities of what could be. And as you're saying, you've got children, you've got other commitments, whereas back then you didn't have all the other things that we've got now as sort of more mature women. So you've hinted a little bit what younger Penny was like. She took a few risks. Tell us a bit more about what you were doing as a younger woman and what you were like in your 20s.
I was quite different. It's quite interesting. So when I left school and went to university, I became quite alternative, and I dyed my hair black, and I was into alternative music, and I had a radio show, and I was into surrealism, the surrealist movement from the 1920s. And I was really envisioned quite a creative alternative life for myself. And there's no way that I would have imagined. I feel I'm a lot more conservative now than I envisioned I would be. But maybe it is dependent on who you end up with as your life partner, I think, and how that road carries out. But I traveled a lot. I loved traveling. I've had a lot of jobs in my life. I counted up, actually, jobs and careers. I'm up to 35.
That's impressive.
So well, I think it shows that possibly I'm a little bit lost and still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. But yeah, I just I envisioned something quite different for myself, I think.
Okay, well that's interesting. So what sort of things were you doing in your 20s? What were some of those jobs that might be interesting for us to hear about?
When I hit London, I was a research assistant for a management consulting firm, and it was before the era of internet. So I had to read 7 newspapers a day, all the broadsheets, and there was a list of companies I had to search on, articles on. It was quite a thick document, British Aerospace, BP, all these worldwide companies. And any articles that came up in the newspaper, I had to clip them, stick them onto a bit of paper, date stamp, and then photocopy, and then send them out through the internal post to all the other branches across Europe. So that is how they got the management consultants stayed informed on the companies they were working on. You think now, how archaic.
And that's not long ago, is it?
Well, it was 1995, yeah.
Wow.
So, and then there were other things. I'd get a call saying, I need a report on the Heathrow Airport from 1973 about something. And it was a bit like being a detective. It was quite fun, actually. I had my contacts and my people who worked in records offices around London, and I'd ring around and finally get this report. And it was, you'd get a bit excited. Jackpot, I've got this weird document that you'd think, how on earth would you find something like that? Anyway, but I got a little bit tired of being in an office, and I had visions of the sound of music, and took a job as an au pair in Austria, not far from Salzburg. One thing I'll say, when I was younger, I had a very romanticised view of the world.
Mm-hmm.
And that has diminished somewhat as I've experienced, as I've
become a little harder and gnarlier.
Had a bit of life experience. The au pair job in Austria was horrible. They were the worst children in the world, and I was, I envisioned myself leading them on picnics through the mountains, and they were horrible children and a very strange family. So that lasted about 6 weeks, because I had this horrible feeling of being stuck there, because I didn't want to be a quitter. And I just felt I had to stick it out for the entire year. And it was my father who rang, and he said, you don't have to be there. Life's too short. Don't do it to yourself. And that year I'd lost my brother in a car accident. And it actually was a really big reassessment of life and what, the meaning of life, and you need to take every moment you can and do, you know, do what feels right for you.
Yeah.
And that's it. I suppose you're brought up with these values: don't quit, stick at a job. But then where do you draw the line? When you're that miserable, I think that's the time to okay, pull out now.
And that reality check too, when you're younger and you knew your younger brother had passed and didn't get to live his life, then why would you be stuck in something that you're not happy with? So, you know, you've taken some more opportunities, obviously, with the amount of different jobs that you've.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So from there, I ended up in Egypt and then Turkey, and worked in Turkey for 7 months, doing a lot of different things: kitchen hand and tour guide and sign painter. And after that, I ended up working in a homeopathic lab in England, doing quality control on homeopathic remedies. So yes, it was just a very, you know, trying a bit of everything and seeing where I end up.
Oh, so you mentioned then, Penny, that you had a romantic view of the world and it's changed somewhat as you become older. What did you imagine your future life was going to be like back then? Because again, you mentioned it's more conservative now than what you imagined. So what were you actually thinking it could be like?
When I left uni, I had very big dreams, and I worked in radio, volunteering on 40 dBFM in Toowoomba. And I loved that. And I thought I wanted to travel and work in film and write and all these things. But I didn't ever know how to. I didn't know how to get into it. I was really stuck. And I think it was all a very personal block from my point, just lacking confidence or something. I really did envision a big, big life. I think bringing it back to now, that I feel like I can still have a big life, even though it's, you know, I'm nearing middle of it, or we're at midlife. It can still be a big life. It's not over.
And not by a long shot. We've got decades ahead of us. And that's what's the lovely thing. We've got just as many years ahead of us as we have behind us. And I think sometimes we think, oh, well, we've reached middle age, that's it. But that is certainly not the case. And it's great to see women who are showing that there is more, well and truly more ahead of them. So, Penny, again, the fact that you went through a personal tragedy with your brother dying, that's a massive challenge for any person to go through. What other sorts of challenges have you had that may have shaped the person you are today?
That was definitely a huge one and changed the face of our family, changed our family forever, and the dynamics and everything. I think the other big challenge has been when I had my daughter. It was a bit later in life, late 30s, and my husband worked away. So I was on my own with a newborn, with a no support network, and losing that freedom and sense of, or suddenly you go from being really all you have to think about is yourself to just being constantly absorbed by this little human. But just not having a break, a mental break, and it does start to play havoc a bit with your your mental state.
There would be many women who wouldn't agree with that statement. Absolutely. Yeah.
That was a big one. And now she's older, it's, everything's balanced out again. It was a tricky time, just not having. I was really like a single mum, but without, obviously I had a breadwinner in the family, but just having that constantness of it all.
Yeah. That's a big one. And I know for myself, I found that to be the case. And at that point in time, when the children were really young, we were living on a remote property in southwest Queensland. So there was very little contact with other adults. It was just you and the children, no break, no family. Friends would be hours away from where you lived. And that is a really tough time. And when you say that you've done that a lot without your husband being there as a supporter as well because he was away with his work, that would have been a tough time for you.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Like living out west, it's isolating. But it's the thing is too, you're not alone. There are mothers everywhere going through the same thing. It's just that while you're living it, it's just you have to get through to the other side.
Do you find, Penny, that sometimes, and it happens also with the ups and downs of any period in your life, do you find sometimes you don't really hear the reality of what motherhood can be like and what different phases and stages of your life can be like? Because right now we've got the season we had the season of young children, really young children. And I suppose the younger mothers now have got even more difficulties because they've got the social media pictures and what the perfect family looks like and all the happy snaps happening. And, oh God, I'm living in just an absolute shit show around me. And it's not like that. We don't often tell the truth as openly as possibly what we could to make it feel that it's normal. And likewise, I'm finding now with midlife, there are a lot of things that you don't know until you're in the throes of it. And then not as many people are talking about it as they should be to prepare you for what can come up. So have you found any of that in those stages of your life, of when you were having a younger child and now that you're going through the season of being an older woman?
I think you're right. Although I'm quite observant. I'm an observer of life, and I had seen what young children can do to mothers and families. Not in a bad way. That sounds terrible. It does place pressure on. Anyway, I'd seen that, and I did. It's why I held off so long to have a child. To be honest, I thought that probably wasn't for me.
Yeah.
But the midlife thing's a big one because, yes, not a lot of people talk about it. You get the odd person going, oh, I'm just having a hot flash, or I'm just having a moment. But that's all I know about it, really. I mean, what you are actually doing with bringing it to the forefront of everyone's conversation is brilliant, because we need more of that, Jo.
Well, we do.
Yeah.
Because I found I was the same. I thought you had hot flushes and your period stopped and that was it. I didn't realise there were all of the years beforehand with other sorts of symptoms and bodily changes that you have had no idea because nobody talked about it.
That's it. And the term perimenopause is only something I learned, I think, last year. I put it all under the banner of menopause. I thought it was all menopause, but I didn't realise it's after that. So it's kind of correcting the terminology and getting it all, so we know what's happening to us.
It is. So, Pen, you've got a daughter going through, your daughter is now 12, so she's going through puberty, and you're probably, well, more than likely, being in your late 40s, going through perimenopause. How do you navigate that? Because you've got the start of a woman's journey happening with your daughter, the reproductive journey with your daughter, and you've got the ending of yours. So I imagine there'd be big fluxes and changes in the hormones in your house.
My poor husband. He might need to buy a unit somewhere for the next 5 and go and live somewhere for the next 5 years. You're spot on. It's definitely what's going. But what I absolutely love about my daughter is that she's very good communicator. And she is very hormonal, and she's horrible when she's hormonal. She'll then come up to me later and she'll say, sorry, Mum, sorry about that. I'm just a bit hormonal at the moment. So she's got she can identify her feelings and what's happening. And also she will say, Mum, I think you're a bit hormonal at the moment.
Is that right?
Yes.
Love it.
Are you about to, is it nearly your time of the month, Mum? Because holy smokes. So I guess we're pretty open about it in our house, and we're very communicative, and it helps a lot rather than just everyone stewing in their corner.
Yeah. So would you talk about how it's changing for you? So because my mother actually had a hysterectomy when she was a younger woman, so I never saw or heard about perimenopause as much and what she went through. And again, I was living away from home, but now you've got your daughter in your house. Would you be talking about how things change for you as a woman?
I must say the focus is more on her at the moment, her changes.
Yeah.
They seem bigger and they're sort of more, whereas mine are more subtle and gradual.
Yeah.
So the focus is on her.
Yes.
But yes, mine's like a storm brewing in the background.
Ready to be a Category 5 cyclone.
Yeah. Watch out, Higgins storm chasers. I'm on my way.
So because you've got it burbling in the background and it is there, how are you supporting yourself as far as health and wellness goes in this stage? Because your daughter is obviously a focus that you've got to be aware of and be there to support her. What are you doing to support yourself during this stage?
At the moment, very little, to be honest, but I do have to rectify that. I get regular massage and Reiki, which I find that energetic work really helps me and really sorts me out. I get that every 2 to 3 weeks. And I try to take a walk on the beach at least once a week, but I'm not doing enough vitamin-wise, and I really need to, get onto that. It's just another job, Jo. It's another job that I have to put on my list, but it's just down the list a bit.
It is hard, and because I think as women we put ourselves lower on the list. That's just the nature of the beast, and it gets to a point where you have to prioritize yourself higher, and that's what I found for me personally, that being lower on the list came at a cost. And I just am there to support women, to help them move up further on that list and just do little things and not see it as a job. See it as a part and parcel of you being the best version of yourself that you can give to others. And that's a big mindset shift. It is a huge mindset shift for women. And that's the way it's shaped my thinking. So, and that's because I've grown older, and I've also seen my mum go through, as she was dying at a younger age than what she should have been. Some of that was due to the misinformation she had when she was younger in the way that she could support her health, or just a lack of awareness. And I thought that's not how I wanted to age. So that shaped my thinking about what do I want my future 30 years time look like? How do I want to be when I'm an 80-year-old? How do I want to be when I'm in my mid-70s? I want to be able to play with grandkids and go traveling and do all those things. Well, I can't if I'm going to be bedridden. And so what am I going to do? I work backwards then. And seeing my mum as a role model, well, she's done this, this, and this. I don't want that outcome. So what am I going to do to support me? So that changed my thinking about growing older. Has there anything that's shaping your thinking or your current thinking about getting older?
I think it's going back to what I mentioned earlier, that I care less about what people think, and I'm more comfortable in my own skin. And I'm no longer the naive country girl who's so scared of everything. It's a bit like I've got that zest for life that I should have. I mean, I did have a zest for life when I was younger, but it's a renewed zest of life, and it's on a deeper level, I think. I'm way more of a renegade than I used to be, but without being crazy or illegal. But I'm a little bit, and it's a little bit coming to home now with the school stuff that I'm president of the PNC at my daughter's school, and we're currently trying to organise an event. And they're also worried about this happening and that happening, and I just am rolling my eyes going, oh, God, just stop being so scared and caught up with bureaucracy. Just live life. Let's have a fun event without all this risk management stuff. I know that's not how life works, but this is, once upon a time I would have been, okay, yes. And now I'm a bit more, come on, people. Yeah. There's more to life than being scared of something happening at every single turn.
Yes. So are you less or more risk averse then, if that's the case?
Well, it's interesting because didn't I say before? I said before that I think it's a different type of risk. I think it's a little less worried about the rules now. Yeah. I probably am a little bit more, when it comes to crazy overseas things on dodgy planes, a little bit more anti the risk. Whereas when it comes to silly rules that are made for minorities, then I'm a little bit more anti, just thinking, let's just go over the top of that one.
Yeah, yes. So has there been anyone that you've seen do something like that? Because sometimes it's great to have a role model. And I love hearing who people have as their role models, as you know, as someone to aspire to or look to, or there's values or shared beliefs that you've got. Is there anyone in your life that you look at as being a role model for you?
Oh, well, I had not that I love Nigella Lawson. I would say she's one of my role models. I'd love to meet her one day. She's been through a lot in her life, and she's come out a lot, and she's come out with grace and courage, but she loves food like I do, and cooking. I think she's a great person. And any woman, I think, who around our age, this midlife age, who've launched themselves into something new and just done it with bravery and courage, and they're making a go of something new, that's an incredible inspiration, because it's enforcing that idea that life is really, the next part of life is just beginning. Let's get into it. And that's fantastic. There's a woman in New York called Iris Apfel.
She's brilliant. Yes.
She's absolutely splendid. She's about 90.
Yeah.
She's just bedecked in amazing jewelry. You just want to be, a friend of mine puts it a little R-ratedly, 0 Fs.
Yes.
Get out there, wear what you want, just be you. It's just an inspiration.
Yep, she is such an amazing woman. Her outfits are incredible. I love her glasses, and everything is just on point. An incredible woman. So she's creative. Nigella Lawson's a creative. You've also got that creative bent as well. So you're talking about your cooking and how you love cooking, and I also know that you love anything to do with design. So what could be on the cards for Penny coming up?
Well, I've recently launched my own business, the Noosa Stylist. I want to do more food styling and helping people use the things they love in their home in an aesthetically pleasing way, I suppose. Because I think this era too, where we're trying to upcycle and reuse rather than just get everything new, I want to help people rework what they've got in their home and make it look fabulous without throwing everything out, really. And I also offer a service where I take styled photos for people's social media accounts. So it's a multifaceted business. I don't know how. I need to work on my website so that I can actually just get a bit of clarity around that. But yes, that's currently
really exciting.
Yeah, thanks, Jo.
I'm thrilled for that. Thrilled for you to hear that, because it means that you're using your skills and talents in a way that is going to be unique, and it's also helping others. And I think we if we can use our skills in that way to help others bring out the best in their lives, that's a great thing to work towards, Penny. So I'm wishing you all the very best in that. So if anyone is interested in finding out more about what you're doing, is there a way, you talked about you were calling yourself the Noosa Stylist, is there a way people can connect with you if they're interested in some of the things that you just talked about then?
At the moment, I'm just on Instagram as the Noosa Stylist. That's my main communication method, I think, for the business. But I'm working on a website. It's just, it's all a work in progress. I've only really recently launched, so it's just on its way.
That's excellent. That's a great metaphor for what we are. Hey, Penny, we're on our way. Things are being launched at every moment we possibly can. No, that's exciting for us. So thank you for telling us about how we can connect with you. And before we wrap up our interview, I've got a couple of questions that I love to ask people. So if you could give the 40 plus women that are listening one piece of advice, what would that be?
You're never too old to do the things you love, and it's never too late to start something new. And I absolutely love the film Dead Poets Society.
Mm.
The saying that came out of that film, Carpe Diem, seize the day, is just, I think, a motto that everyone should live by.
Oh, love it. And yes, even if seizing the day some days just is getting your one foot in front of the other. we actually can seize it in different ways at different times, can't we?
Oh, we can. Sometimes it's getting your kid to school on time.
But that's it. You're never too old and you're never too late. That is a really one of my favorite mantras as well. Now, Penny, if you could look into the future, what do you hope that 80-year-old Penny is going to say about current day Penny?
I want to have no regrets, and I want to look back and say, wasn't it really great the way I decided to start that business, write that book, travel to those places that I always wanted to travel to, and just live that really spirited, beautiful life.
Oh, well, let's hope 80-year-old Penny is going to say every one of those words. I look forward to seeing crossing fingers. I look forward to seeing what's going to be coming over with Penny in the next few years. So thank you so much for your time today, Pen. And I'll put all of the details where people can get to connect with you in the show notes.
Thanks very much for having me, Jo. It's been lovely chatting. Thank you. And all the best with your venture too, which is just great, teaching us what we need to know.
Well, some of what we need to know. I am not the guru by any means. I'm slowly but surely we will all get to where we need to be.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Pen.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening and sharing your time with me today. I'd love you to hit subscribe on Apple Podcast or your favourite podcast app to keep spreading these empowering messages. Please share this podcast with other incredible midlife women in your world. Join me again next week for another Redefining Midlife conversation. Thanks again for tuning in.